Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome. This is the Podcaster Community Show, short conversations that are not just about podcasting because I like to take the scenic route. My guest today is Sean Mallary. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My distinct pleasure. You were a little early. That's not a dig on everybody else who's ever been on the show who hasn't been a little early. You're not supposed to show up early, but Sean showed up a little early. So we had a little more time than usual to chat. So we got to talking about not just how we both got into podcasting, but like how we got started listening to podcasters as podcasting as consumers. And I got to the point where I was asking you where you saw yourself, in the context of podcasting, where you saw yourself like in a year and a half, in 18 months. And what I'm curious about is there's like, ooh, podcasting is cool. That's like when you first experience it, right?
Sure.
And then there's also the, ooh, listening to them is cool. Like, but after you do it enough, you really start to get a feel for, whoa, what is this really? And we could probably talk a lot about what you do and what you've done with lighting. But I'm just wondering, now that you've got a taste for listening to podcasts and creating podcasts, do you feel like you're drawn more toward what I call the enabler, the people who do everything, but you don't see them or hear them, versus being the actual talent that's heard? You feel like one of those calls to you more than the other?
I definitely feel like a behind the scenes person. I don't necessarily want to be the person on the mic, so I think a producer role and editing will probably be the direction I go in. But I have enjoyed my conversations in my show, and I have a couple different friends who we've talked about doing kind of just a bullshit friends sort of show just for fun. And I could see it going that way for sure.
Do you ever get the urge to just delete yourself from the conversation? Sometimes I have a cool conversation with someone and I feel like I could just delete my track.
Sure. And and I'm definitely one of those people who does a lot of responding and yeah, and sure. So I definitely erase a lot of that because it gets annoying after a while. But yeah. So
it's fun. Yeah. I warn people in advance, I'm not deleting any of your ums and ahs. And I'm like, let's see just how many you put in. I'm noticing not many at all. And I think there's something about, I'm guessing, if you've done like lighting for any live performances, you get to see like, they do a better job most of the time.
Yeah.
when there's no safety net.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I do a handful of live music and I've done musicals and stuff, but yeah, definitely when you're in the hot seat, as they say, it's a different experience when you're doing it live. So there's very few times you can go back and redo that sort of thing. So
yeah, and in a way that kind of becomes part of the organicness of Craig and Sean having a conversation. This is the two of us trying to figure out who goes next when, or do we make hand gestures, or whatever.
Right.
I was going to say, I'm not a lighting director. I don't even play one on TV. I can spell light. That's the limit. I have a vague sense of what like a lighting director and a lighting designer and maybe like a grip, like some basic stuff. But I'm wondering how, I'm always interested in like skill transfer. So if there was something about lighting and I'm going, oh yeah, look, if you're in the lighting department, if you're in the lighting department in theater, you're literally behind the scenes or you're literally out of sight.
Yeah.
And you're just telling me that's what you're feeling drawn to with podcasting.
Yeah.
But do you feel like being in front of the mic also forces you to grow in a way that everything you've done in lighting never, ever pushed you that way? Or
yeah, I mean, no, that is interesting. I definitely spent many years enjoying not being in my own lights or being on stage in any way. Again, the experience I've had through doing my interview style show, talking to pretty much complete strangers, has sort of changed the way I've communicated with people, how I've thought about things. I've definitely enjoyed it, but I don't see myself as wanting that to be where I look for work next. I definitely feel the producer role speaks to me more that way. But again, I have enjoyed it. And because I do like talking to people, I was a Lyft driver for a while here in Denver before the pandemic. And that was one of my favorite things, was just talking with people for 5-10 minutes at a time and getting to know people. And so there is something to that on the mic side that is appealing to me. And, in terms of lighting, it's just telling stories in a different way,
Two thoughts come to mind. I'm trying to remember so you and I met in the Akimbo podcasting course. And in one of the previous iterations, my brain just went, I distinctly remember there was somebody, I think they might have been an Uber driver. There
Uh-huh.
was somebody who built a show,
Yeah.
which was literally recording those conversations. The guy mic'd his car. And then
Sure.
when you'd randomly get in the car, he'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
by the way, would you
Right.
like to? And then people would say yes or no. And then he would do little, because
Yeah.
that's a whole format
Yeah.
we don't know what's going to come out of this.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny that you say that. The idea that I did come up with for the podcasting workshop was, I had a very different experience as a Lyft driver. I felt like I had these really pretty intense connections with a lot of people because I drove at night, and a lot of people would be in various states of intoxication, and very weirdly
Is that really
vulnerable.
consent if they sign
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Right.
but no, vulnerable and not in like a weird, creepy sort of way, but like just a very open sort of way. And
Yeah.
I started writing down some of these experiences, and like I said, I drove for about 3 years, had about 3,000 passengers, and I mean, I talked a guy out of committing suicide one night and took him to a hospital instead. There was handfuls of things like that, and so my idea for the podcast was actually to write these things and restage them in sort of an audio play format.
Mm.
And I'm still interested in doing that. I kind of stalled out because that's just a different shift in audio work in terms of multiple actors and things like that. And again, I don't know if I want to be the driver character or hire an actor
Oh,
that
you
could
have
do
to
it
be the
better.
driver character. You have to be the driver
Yeah.
character. If you write
Yeah.
those things, you have, well, first of
Yeah.
all, do it.
Yeah.
And when you do it, my
Uh-huh.
brain just went, oh
Yeah.
my God, that's totally like, because it's like you get to listen, like you're riding in the trunk. You get to listen to these conversations,
Sure.
that are restaged. That would be a neat thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, miking up my car, that seems like a violation to me. And I don't know how honest people would have actually been knowing that was the case. Right. And I know
that was my concern, is like, you
yeah.
kind of have to,
Yeah.
even
And
if they say, go ahead.
yeah. And maybe, no, it just maybe forces the conversation after that, and so maybe less organic. I mean, I know people sort of do forget that a mic is there sometimes, that happens, but I don't know,
Yeah.
that would have been odd to me if, I wouldn't have done that personally, but.
Well, it gets back to the same. I kind of have I have the exact same challenge here.
Mm-hmm.
I do a little bit of prep work, and I do it immediately before these calls.
Yeah.
People who listen a lot, I call it loading the guest into my head, where I do nothing but think about the person who's showing up at whatever time it is. And maybe I'm Google, or I'm on LinkedIn, or I'm, whatever I get my hands on. I'm not trying to like accomplish anything in particular. I'm just going to spend time thinking about that person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that's totally missing. If you're picking up people, in the Lyft economy, it's like, I don't know what we're going to get.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that'd be tough. It's zero prep. You have literally no clue.
Yeah, sure.
And then the other part would be, if people who've been guests on the show know this, I tell you, yes, at the end, I'm going to give you a great big veto button, and you can just be like, that was awesome, or no.
Sure.
And that'd be another thing that would be a little tricky to explain to people, because maybe they're in a hurry or they don't have time for that. And it's totally not what they were expecting. I was expecting a ride from point A to point B, bro,
Sure.
and you're making a podcast.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there's all that meta.
Well, the interesting thing about Lyft, at least when they first started and when I started working with them, they wanted that community. I mean, that was their whole thing, was they encouraged drivers to talk to their passengers to their comfort level. I've always thought about it as a weird situation. I'm a stranger, you're a stranger, we're getting in my car. The talking for me was just to kind of put people at ease more than anything else. And, it had mixed results, but for the most part, people were interested in sort of taking that and, just try to make it a less awkward experience more than anything else. And that was what I really enjoyed about it,
But connections.
Yeah.
People, and I think you actually asked me, what's the show about? They show
Sure.
up with, all right, I'm down for a recording session, but what is this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, sometimes it's like a Venn diagram. I have two circles, topic A, topic B, and then I try to like smash them together to make them overlap. And I just went, oh, wait a second. So you practiced 3,000 repetitions of thrown into a small space with a person you don't know, and now you
Right.
have to try and make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's kind of like doing conversations for podcasts. So I'm like,
Sure.
whoa,
Yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
setup work for what you're doing with your show currently. Have you ever
Yeah.
noticed that?
Yeah. 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 For
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
Cool. Do you feel like I always this show doesn't really have a through line. It kind of does. It's about
Yeah.
podcasts, but
Sure.
doesn't really.
Hmm.
And I feel like if a show has a through line, then I'm
Hmm.
leery of having to become like I become an indentured servant. Like I
Yeah.
have to always make sure that I'm at least paying lip service to the topic that we're supposed to be making a show about.
Yeah.
And do you think maybe that's part of your I was going to say your aversion to being in front of the mic is I don't want to do that. I want to just do this random thing that I'm currently doing.
Well, I think, um, you know, I did lighting for 20 years, and there's always been a fun sort of playful back and forth between us and the audio folks, right? So you're in technical rehearsals, and sometimes you have to stop to fix a light or you fix a sound cue. And so it's always a competition, you know. You have to tell everyone in the room that you're waiting for lighting, you're waiting for sound. And so this friendly competition to see who can wait the least, right? And so
Screw it up the least, right?
and so I mean, it's all in good fun, but I joke with people that I still know in that industry, and I'm like, I did lighting for 20 years, and now I'm calling myself a sound guy. I don't know what the heck is going on, you know. um, uh, I'm like, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome. I'm kind of learning new skill sets, but a lot of it, is kind of shifting in a similar direction in terms of the tech. Um, but yeah, it's just funny. I'm still going like, how is it that I'm, in front of a mic these days? That's just nuts. I never like in my undergrad days in the late '90s, I would have never imagined this as a reality for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull on that thread some more.
Okay.
Imagining, thinking about yourself like as the podcaster that you currently are.
Hmm.
Um, what when so somebody a lot of times what show do you like? Oh, philosophy.
Hmm.
And then we like people pass names of shows around a lot, right?
Oh yeah.
What show like what other shows would you like to be in a sentence with? So somebody says 3 shows about cheese, and you're in the list, and who else is in there?
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I mean, I don't. I really can't. I don't know. I told you before. I do listen to a lot of comedy, but I mean, I listen to staples like Radiolab and
Mm,
Reply All and This American Life. I mean, those three. I mean, listen to a lot of those, or at least This American Life on the radio long before the
mm,
the podcast world ever became a thing. So that kind of storytelling has always been appealing to me, and I think of Mike Birbiglia sort of getting his start as an NPR person on the Moth and in on This American Life live shows, and there's something to that kind of storytelling that is really appealing. I mean, I'm doing an interview style show; it's completely different, but that is the world that is interesting to me because I mean, there's a theatricality to it. There is a constant sort of having to move things forward through story in audio. And
mm,
I can't imagine what direction is going to sort of aim me towards those like giants, but I like what they're doing. And even if I was doing editing for something along those lines, I think I would be in a very good place in terms of where I want to be. But I mean, I listen to all these comedians sitting around their garages bullshitting about dick jokes and stuff. And, I mean, that's fun too. I love the playfulness of that kind of stuff. And so, I don't know, there's a in between those worlds. I would love to figure that out.
there's a neat through line there. You're talking about storytelling again, and
Yeah.
you were just talking before about making a podcast about restaging,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, little vignettes. I've always liked that. That's a handy word to trot out to
Hmm.
people listening. If you ever get a conversation with someone and people are a little nervous, like I can't do an hour and a half of like coherent talking. I tell
Sure.
them, oh, you don't have to. We'll just do
Yeah.
little vignettes. It's like
Yeah.
beach volleyball. I'll
Sure.
set it, you spike it. If you don't score, my bad. I didn't set it correctly. We'll try again. And
Yeah.
almost anybody can imagine, oh, well, I can I can do 3 back and forths, and then
Mhm.
next thing you know, an hour and a half in, they're dropping the good stuff. So
Yeah.
just that idea of being the person, like when when you were just talking about the people and
Mhm.
the shows that are storytelling icons for you,
Mhm.
and then before we were talking about the kind of storytelling that you're had been doing with lighting, and now you're
Mhm.
talking about doing more succinctly with your shows.
Yeah.
That storytelling through line, mm, like goes back to I want to be the enabler, I want to be the producer, and
Right.
I think no matter where you are in the production thing, you're going to
Mhm.
have a fingerprint. Like your fingerprints are going to be on. You're in the
Yeah.
production meeting and you asked
Yeah.
a question or something.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, the one thing I did love about doing theater all these years, I mean, it is very collaborative, right? And I think you even
Mm,
had mentioned podcasting can be kind of lonely. Well,
kind
that's
of.
yeah, but
It's horrible.
the one of the things that I got from the Akimbo workshop was, I mean, it wasn't about your skills, it wasn't about your content, it was about the connection to those people,
Yes.
and um I think I didn't always take advantage of that in the lighting world where I want to in the radio podcasting world.
Audio world, yeah.
Yeah, and it is even if it can be lonely and you're editing or whatever, I still think there's a community to tap. I'm part of a group here in Colorado called the High Altitude Radio Group, and we do a book club, and all of that
Mm,
is way more appealing than any of it really for me, you know. So yeah, it's
those are
connection and
really good
storytelling
points.
at its roots. Yeah.
I think, and I'm just going, maybe I should change the words I use. As often as anything, I often say podcasting is lonely or
Yeah.
it's a stern, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
see all this coal shovel, like it's an endless thing.
Yeah.
But I'm actually thinking, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna, guess for you and I know for me, I
Uh,
don't actually mind that work. What
sure.
bothers me is
Uh,
when I get excited about something and my spouse is like, if you talk about podcasting one more time, I'm gonna
sure.
hit you with this pan. Like
Yeah. Uh-huh.
just shut
Yeah.
up about podcasting.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's not that podcasting is lonely. I'm like, oh, I should change my words. It's
Mm.
actually, I need a place to go and be rapidly, passionately, insanely. And that's part
Mhm.
of what this show is.
Yeah.
This is my way of scratching my own itch.
Yeah,
But I
sure.
think that that's an opportunity that people who are making podcasts, you need not an opportunity. That's a blind spot, a hazard, a
Mm.
pitfall
Mm.
that people need to be aware of. And like, yeah, you can do really long. I recorded 3 hours. It took me
Mhm.
37 to edit it. That's
Yeah.
okay. As long as
Yeah.
when you get to the end, you can be like, I made this thing. Look, it's
Yeah.
awesome. And you can share it with all my friends from like run screaming down the street. So maybe
Yeah.
it's not that it's lonely. It's that
Yeah.
we need others.
I agree, and I think that's one of those things coming out of the pandemic that a lot of us are realizing in weird ways is that we need people a lot more than we've ever imagined. And I
Yeah.
think even our little silos and everything else, we just that connection and everything else, it's way more important to me these days than really anything else, just that connecting with my family in ways that I've never done before and getting to know my neighbors who had barbecues and these marathon day drinking sessions in their front yards during the pandemic, but like I made friends
It's
during this
funny.
time, and so it's that connection thing is very important. And I think it is good that there's forums like this and Akimbo, to do that because it not only can it be, you're doing all this work in isolation, but I mean it's just daunting the amount of work it
Mm.
can take. So
Are you
having
getting a
people
lot
to
of people
bounce off.
asking you, "Hey, how do I get started in," like a lot of times it's the first person be like, "I think I'm gonna go try this new thing." And then your whole
Sure.
friend group is like, "Where wait, what? Tell me more." Are you
Yeah,
finding that's fun?
it is, and, some people are definitely sort of like, "I didn't even know that's something people could do," but, I again, with my show, I have a theme that speaks to me and I realize speaks to other people, and, even if it's a small niche of the world, but people are curious about this kinda stuff, and so, yeah, I mean, it's been fun just having people reach out to me going, "Wow, this is cool," I didn't know this part of you, and things like that. So,
Terrific.
yeah.
As much as I hate to say it, I'm watching our time tick away.
Yeah, yeah.
We have not said a single word about where people can find more about you or even the name of your show. So
Sure.
what's the
Alright.
name of your show and where can people find more about you?
Yeah, so my show is called Where Did I Get Like This? It's basically a show where I talk to people about moving around a lot because I grew up as a nomadic military brat. And so all my guests have had something similar. And then this season, I'm actually talking to people who lived in one place, that is just opposite of the way I grew up. So my website is thefullmedium.com. That's the name of my company that I'm producing under. And that site actually has a couple of shows that I've started and are to be determined, and as well as some of my lighting work is there as well. That's where I'm pointing people these days.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah,
Sean, it was a pleasure to meet you face to face, to get a
yeah,
chance to
ditto.
talk. And thanks so much for taking the time.
All right, thank you so much.